Hello and welcome to the circus.
If you're blue, you don't know where to go to. Why don't you go? Fashion sits, putting on the Ritz. Different types, wear a day, coat pants with stripes, cutaway, coat perfect fits, putting on the Ritz. Come on. Are you ready?
Mesdames et messieurs, garçons et filles, jokers of all ages, welcome to the worst wrestling podcast. You can find us every Saturday at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, exclusively on YouTube and Spotify. I am your host, Jack Lucene, aka the Fantasy Joker. I am under the weather today. Literally, both my ears are plugged, so apologies if I sound a little bit off. This is my Michael Jordan flu game. I'm just going to try and get through it the best I can. This is a comedy-fueled, grassroots, fan-driven wrestling podcast, and I want to be the James Ellsworth of wrestling podcasts, you guys. I want to be king of the jobbers, and to do that, I need your help out there. I want to hear from you. I need you guys to be my EVPs like the Young Bucks. So if you have ideas, questions for the show, please hit me up on Twitter at Jack Lucene, or if you prefer something less public, you can always send me emails to the fantasyjoker420@gmail.com. We will get into our first topic of the day. The Rock has gone full heel. He has joined the Bloodline, and he came into Utah hot like Michael Scott.
Stanley, you crush your wife during sex and your heart sucks. Boom, roasted. Oscar, you are... Oscar, you're gay.
Wow.
Andy, Cornell Call, they think you suck. And you're gayer than Oscar. Boom, roasted.
Boom, roasted.
So The Rock has given everybody what we wanted. Full heel mode. Hollywood Rock came out with the $500 vest. Came out looking like $1 million. Officially joins the Bloodline. He's dropping lines on the crowd. You broke the record for largest gathering of trailer park trash The Rock has ever seen. Boom! Roasted. Shut up, fatty, before The Rock comes out there and slaps the herpes off your lips. Boom! Roasted. The Rock and Roman Reigns, you had it, and you flushed it down the toilet. The same toilet you sat your fat asses on and tweeted, "We want Cody. Cody has to finish the story." Boom! Roasted. So it's a fantastic segment. Obviously, it's doing insane numbers on the IWC, which I found was just internet wrestling community. But basically, The Rock came out, joined the Bloodline, and put up the wrong finger symbol. Did the whole the Bullet Club, bang bang finger bang. Bang bang scissor gang. But no, I think people are actually reading too much into the whole hand signal thing. Some of the camera cuts and the language that he was using in the promo. I think this was just standard. The Rock's turning heel. I don't know that he's symbolizing that he's going to turn on Roman at WrestleMania. And I don't even know necessarily that that's the story that I am really looking for. We already have the setup with Seth Rollins declaring that he wants to be Cody's Shield, right? And so now you've got The Rock joining the Bloodline. I've seen other tidbits online about, maybe Cody's going to recreate his own version of the Avengers to take on the Bloodline. So maybe we see Sami Zayn, maybe we see Randy Orton, maybe we see some of these other pieces. I think there's one guy that could really change the tide. Stone Cold Steve Austin has to get involved in this program. That would really make this, I think, the greatest WrestleMania program of all time. If you could get Stone Cold involved, give us a 6-man tag team match of the Bloodline. So you have The Rock, Roman Reigns, and whether you want to use Jimmy or Solo, whatever, versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, Seth Rollins, and Cody Rhodes. You get the standoff one more time, The Rock versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania. Ooh, the shit writes itself. So I'm hoping, maybe that is actually what happens and we get Stone Cold. I think we could still see potentially both stories happen. Maybe The Rock does end up turning on Roman Reigns, but we see that at night 2 because maybe they lose the match at night 1 in the tag match. And if it's because of Austin, that's the kind of thing that would really stick in the craw of The Rock in particular, that Stone Cold, his old arch nemesis, came back and they won that match. And, he could potentially blame Roman Reigns for it. You could kind of hint it along the show of night 2. And then maybe that's what ultimately happens, where somehow The Rock does, whether he does it inadvertently or just completely on purpose, cost Roman Reigns the title. And to set up a feud and a match going into the next year and next year's WrestleMania. We'll see if that's the route they take. I feel like that was maybe more aligned with when they thought that The Rock versus Roman Reigns was just going to go over and they weren't going to pivot into what we've got now. And, shout out to the fans, because it's like people, the let it play out crowd, on the one hand, you're winning because we're getting an amazing story. But on the other hand, if the fan reaction was not what it had been, do we even get, this full heel version of The Rock aligning himself completely with Roman Reigns? Was this the original story that they were intending to tell? I don't know that it was. It feels more like a pivot. And so for that reason, I think the fan reaction, if it helped pivot into this storyline, could potentially be $1 million. So I think like most people, I'm looking forward to how this is going to play out heading into WrestleMania. But before we get to WrestleMania, we have to go through the Elimination Chamber. And the men's Elimination Chamber is officially set next week in Perth, Australia, starting at 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Peacock, which is hilarious. I will not be getting up for that. I'm a pretty early riser, guys. I'm up at like 5, 6 a.m. I'm getting up at 4 a.m. to watch that. It'll literally just roll over as soon as it's done anyway. So I'll probably catch that, I would imagine, around 10 o'clock. My time. So I'm excited for Elimination Chamber. Elimination Chamber matches kind of regardless usually are pretty good. And we've got a really good men's matchup here set up officially. There's still a spot remaining in the women's matchup from what I was looking at. But for the men's matchup, we're going to focus here on the men's Elimination Chamber. And, my prediction essentially. So Kevin Owens versus LA Knight, yeah. DM Punk, Drew McIntyre, RKO, Randy Orton, Bobby Lashley, and Logan Paul. So I think the prediction is Drew McIntyre. That seems the most obvious route as a replacement for CM Punk. I could see them entertaining, even potentially. I don't know if they're going to go Seth Drew straight up for the title again at WrestleMania. I could see them mixing somebody else in a triple threat fashion, maybe, whether they shoehorn, obviously it's not going to be Cody Rhodes anymore, but whether they try to shoehorn in a Sami Zayn, for example. I think that could be a nice story beat and maybe something a little different than their previous matchups. But I do think that Drew McIntyre is walking out of Elimination Chamber here the winner. I think that gives him the momentum he needs to go into WrestleMania and actually beat Seth Rollins, whether it is a one-on-one match or some alteration of. I think Drew needs that title next. I think if you're going to keep that title as a legitimate title, a title that seemingly is at a B level, especially after getting dogged by Roman Reigns a couple weeks ago. I really think Drew McIntyre could be a really good second champion to carry that belt, give Seth a break. I think it also, in the back end, because obviously there's all of the machinations of, has Drew McIntyre re-signed his WWE contract? Maybe that helps grease the wheels of him sticking around, realizing, okay, I am going to be a champion and featured, and my creative has been better. As of late, I love the work he's doing lately as a heel. There are certain characters and guys like Drew McIntyre and even like a Seth Rollins that are just meant to be heels, and I just prefer their work so much better. But all of this said, I do think that there is a wild card opportunity here for Logan Paul. And Logan Paul has referenced being double champ, which is actually something I thought was a potential route for Gunther. I thought maybe Gunther would try to do the double champ thing of taking the World Heavyweight Championship from Seth Rollins while retaining his Intercontinental Championship. The last person to have done the double champ route, and I'm not talking about 2 world titles the way Roman Reigns obviously unified his. I am talking about 2 completely separate titles, as in the main title and the mid-card title, right? So we're talking about the last time was Seth, ironically enough, Seth Rollins, with he had the world heavyweight title at the time, and he also had the US title at the time. So I thought maybe Gunther was going to be the one who could double champ it with the world heavy title that's been created now on Raw and the Intercontinental title. Maybe they're going to tease that it will actually be Logan Paul. I have trouble seeing Logan Paul versus Seth one-on-one, and then him having to pull the double duty of also defending the US championship. I think they're going to have a separate program for Logan, so I don't think he's actually going to go over. It's just I could almost see where they would want to, because maybe that to them is a higher profile match, the rematch of Logan Paul and Seth Rollins, and it was a good match, their original match. So it's just a potential avenue. But I think Drew McIntyre pretty solidly is walking out of there, and will be challenging Seth Rollins for the title at WrestleMania. Getting to more of like a back end note on WWE here before I shift gears and companies completely. One thing that's just been kind of upon my ponderance, in my thinkings, is that the Netflix deal with Raw, I think that could actually be the key to Raw moving back to 2 hours. So, historically, for the last decade plus, obviously Raw has been running at 3-hour shows. And whenever people have brought up, would they change back? You have to consider, obviously, the TV money in terms of the network deals and the ad revenue and sponsorship and all the minutia that goes into it. And so for the most part, I think there has always been pushback for those reasons on, walking back the 3 hours to 2. However, when they make the shift to streaming, I find it difficult to believe that they're going to have 2.5-hour run times every week on streaming with no ads. Because that's the thing, right? Unless there is a thing I've seen of Netflix trying to introduce ads. Maybe they have a different set of ad breaks. But for the most part, the idea of shifting to streaming is that you would no longer have the ad breaks that you would normally have. And so maybe they decide to shift back to a 2-hour product because of that. Again, this is nothing official. This is not any kind of reportings. This is just my general musings and thoughts and considerations of the fact that when they do finally make that shift to Netflix and are full streaming in a sense, and are no longer beholden to TV deals, do we maybe see them cut back on that product of, again, cutting back from the 3 hours to 2? I think it's more possible. I think it's more likely when they make that shift to streaming. our next topic. I want to get away from the WWE for a little bit. Obviously, you know, the E is the big company and they have the monopoly pretty much on the pro wrestling world. But for a while, AEW was making that push of being the most relevant secondary company. Obviously, you've always had, well, not always, but you've had NJPW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, you've had AAA, you've had TNA, you've had lots of companies pop up over the years, but AEW felt like it had a different sense of momentum. And this is not you know, an individual take. This is, in fact, the consensus at this point is that AEW has been on just a complete downward trend. And they're basically having WCW problems at this point. So I'm gonna do this kind of in reverse. So obviously you have the Darby Allin promo referencing EVP Cody Rhodes. So you know, and there's been other better recap channels like Going in Raw and like Dave Meltzer out there, who's kind of losing his mind a little bit, to be perfectly honest. But anyways, neither here nor there. There's plenty of channels that will reference the fact that, you know, Darby Allin is referencing WWE in promos, while completely ignoring like the storylines that have been set up within their own company, because like I guess they caught a beat down and they were all bloodied and blah blah blah. And yeah, just in general, as a rule of thumb, like as a writer, one of the things that I would actively be avoiding if I was writing scripts for AEW would be referencing any kind of WWE storylines. To me, it's like that does not exist, because the moment you start trying to play that game, you're acknowledging, you know, that their product is good enough for you to be watching and paying attention to storyline beats that you're then trying to incorporate into your own storyline. And it almost feels like coattail riding. Nobody's buying that shit. And then getting back to the real crux of their problem is that fans are telling you what they want and you're just ignoring them. We want what we have always lamented in WWE and what we have strived for in AEW as a secondary company is that the long-term storytelling and actual pro wrestling is supposed to be like at an elevated level, much more than in WWE, and it really has gone downhill. And you know, you have obviously still your high-end guys like your Bryan Danielsons, and now they're trying to juice it with the incoming stars of a Mercedes Moné and Okada and Will Ospreay. And it's fine to bring those stars in, but if you have no meaningful stories for those stars once you have brought them in, you're going to find yourself in the same predicament that you're currently in. And then, you know, now according to Wrestling Observer newsletter, which is really just Dave Meltzer, you know, it's being reported really by all the major wrestling channels, is that unnamed sources within AEW are growing frustrated with diminishing crowds and Tony Khan's willful ignorance and ceaseless positivity bordering on delusion. That I can relate to from just a corporate standpoint. I don't know about you guys. I used to work at a job. I'm not going to name the company, but the company has since gone bankrupt. And it's very telling because they had a lot of those same problems of when myself as an employee would go and see them and say, hey, we have this major problem. It was often swept under the rug, to the point of I was even told one time there was a really major error on a major retailer site, and I brought it up and I was told that's just the way it is. And that unfortunately is pervasive in all aspects of business and all walks of life. That kind of mentality can kill a company right quick. When you start having that kind of willful ignorance and just delusional positivity that everything is always great, that is an absolute killer. So that's concerning, honestly. The most concerning thing that I've heard coming out of AEW for a hot minute. But it really is like it's the writing. When I say the writing, it's the booking. It's the booking. It's Tony Khan. It is really where it's coming from. There's other problems, and I'll get to that after because I do have a short bit about the Sammy Guevara incident. But before I get into that aspect even of it, I am not an ardent subscriber of AEW. You know, I've watched some of the pay-per-views, I've seen some of the bigger matches. I have not really tried to follow the daily programming schedule. I even had to research a little bit what that programming schedule was. Kind of realizing that AEW Dynamite is supposed to be like their main show. So I watched the one from Valentine's Day. I decided I'll just throw this one on cold because honestly, that's how you're trying to attract fans, right? If I'm a casual wrestling fan to a degree, because even as much as I love WWE, I can admit freely I don't watch every single Raw, every single SmackDown, every single NXT. I'm not contractually required to do so. So I'm not going to, right? I run the worst wrestling podcast for a reason, you guys. But I'm a huge wrestling fan. So I love to interact with other wrestling fans. I love watching wrestling from all walks of life and companies. You tell me that, hey, there's a great match that you need to watch and guide me to it. I will watch and enjoy that match for what it is. So when you're trying to attract what I would call maybe not a casual fan, because obviously I have a deep interest and love of wrestling in general, but like again, like I'm not so heavily invested that I'm the diehard that's watching already every single episode and tweeting about it every single minute of every single day. I'm kind of in between, right? So, and I'm 34 years old. I'm in that demographic, target market, whatever you want to call it. I would quantify and qualify myself as AEW's target market. All right. Now, I watched an AEW Dynamite cold. I took some notes. So here, let's get into AEW Dynamite. This was from, again, February 14th, 2024. Starts off with Jeff Hardy versus Jon Moxley in a Mox Rules match. So already, I have no idea what the fuck is going on. I don't know why Jeff Hardy and Jon Moxley are fighting each other, why this is like a Mox Rules match, which I guess was determined as just like, well, because Moxley is a psychopath, he has his own rule set for matches when he just wants to have a hardcore match, basically. So I get it. He's he's an unhinged character, and that's just his bit. But it's like then he's doing the pen spot with the ear. So Jon Moxley grabs a pen off the desk of the announcer and he's twisting it in Jeff Hardy's ear, which is like a bit from the E. I think it was Randy Orton did that to him during their feud with like a screwdriver or something, wasn't it? But again, it's just like, why is this like random like Mox Rules death match, hardcore match happening between him and Jeff Hardy for no fucking reason? And just like in general, man, I'm watching this match. I'm like, man, Chris Jericho's moving better than Jeff Hardy these days. I love Jeff Hardy as a character. I love him as a persona. I love him as a wrestler. Love him as a human being. And because of that, I honestly would love to see this guy retire pretty soon. Just because I want him to have a great quality of life for the rest of his life. And I'm like very afraid that if he keeps wrestling, into old age, he is not. These swantons, like they look fucking just brutal every time he's taking them now. It's hard to watch, honestly. So again, it's getting off track, but then it's like, so then after the match, and during the match, Moxley is like having these weird interactions with these luchador guys who are kind of in the crowd for no reason. And supposedly they're from AAA. And this is like a feud that's kind of brimming between two companies that I'm supposed to just know about. And so he starts catching a beatdown from the Lucha guys after the match. And then all the AEW baby faces run out to save him because he's an AEW guy too, even though the announcers clearly say like pretty much unanimously they all hate him. And that's a pet peeve of mine just in general of like when you start writing characters to do things that are outside of the character that you've established, right? So if you spend your whole time, here's a perfect example. If you spend your whole time creating this tough guy persona for Moxley, and then he comes out the next match and in a non-ironic way starts like honking people's noses and acting like Orange Cassidy or Danhausen or something, like if it's not, and that's just like he just starts doing that for no reason, like you can't just have characters do shit for no reason. Like, characters need to have motivations behind their actions. Otherwise, it is just random shit. It is monkeys throwing shit at the wall, and your audience can tell. Your audience can pick up on when you are delivering story beats and when your characters are motivated by, previous events and actions that you have set up, versus all the good guys come out because they're good guys. Yay! Like, what the fuck are we doing here? And on top of it, in AEW of all the companies, like, all you had to do is have nobody come out and save them and say, yeah, you know what? Turns out, unfortunately, John Moxley and Blackpool Combat Club or whatever have been kicking the shit out of everyone on the roster, and especially Moxley's been treating everyone like a fucking deranged lunatic. So it turns out nobody came to save him because Blackpool wasn't here tonight. Like, that makes so much more sense than, again, all these yuppie babyface. I think it was MJF was one of them even. I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? So it's like, you started your show, it's 15 minutes in. I have no idea what the fuck is going on. I'm very confused. It's like, there's no recaps. I'm cold here. I'm coming in cold, and I don't know what the fuck is happening in this show. So we continue with finally like the first like real story of the night. And this was the thorough line and story of the night was the Adam Page Swerve Strickland / Samoa Joe feud, which I guess is going to be for the title. And I'm assuming a triple threat, because that got a little weird. I didn't understand at the end of the night either. So Adam Page, he's going versus this guy, Toa Lanoa. That guy's fucking money. I'll say that much. Toa Lanoa, very impressed by him. He is a physical specimen. He's fucking huge. Moves, like, the way he moves is fluid. Very impressed by his skills. He's going to be a thing. But yeah, so Adam Page, rough match, obviously getting beat to shit, comes through with the win. That was pretty obvious. The whole night he's referencing, they're making weird references to RVD, and that's going to be Swerve's opponent. He's like, oh, I'm not going to... It's so stupid, too, because he's like, oh, I'm not going to tell you who you're facing, Swerve, but I can tell you, you're going to have to wait the whole effing show. Like, you couldn't have shoehorned in the telegraph more, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're foreshadowing, but it's like they're beating you over the head with it. And then we got Wardlow versus Commander, which, like, oh my God, Adam Cole, how far have you fallen, my friend? This guy's getting wheeled out in a fucking wheelchair and is like head of this like fucking clandestine group of like almost Undisputed Era, but not quite. It's like, what the fuck? So that was just like unfortunate. He would be so good right now too under the Triple H era. It's like, if he could have just stuck through whatever bullshit Vince McMahon was trying to pitch him, like once Triple H was there, like fuck, Adam Cole would be so money right now. And Undisputed Era in general would just be fucking awesome. Like, imagine, Undisputed Era versus Imperium. Ooh, that would be fucking so good. But no, wasn't in the cards, not in this timeline, guys. So yeah, Wardlow fucking ate shit in this match. He takes a Phoenix Splash, which everyone's talking about the Sammy Guevara one, which I'll get into after this. But like, fucking Commander crushed Wardlow's windpipe on a fucking Phoenix Splash, and then Wardlow seemingly tweaked his knee during the match. It looked awkward trying to get him up for the last powerbomb, and it's like, why is this match even fucking happening? And the whole thing is like, I thought it was supposed to be a squash match, and then it's one of those like squash matches that isn't really a squash match, and it's like, well, this really doesn't serve a purpose for anyone. And then it just ended up getting Wardlow injured, so it's like, why is this happening? And then we get Ricky Starks and Big Bill, the tag champs, at that point still, because I think they already turned it over to Darby and Sting. They had an interview with Darby and Sting, which was like, okay, whatever. And then we get Chris Jericho versus Kyle Fletcher. I will say this Kyle Fletcher kid has an incredible in-ring style. I really like how graceful he was. He was kind of gazelle-like. It was my first time seeing him. I'd never heard of him, never seen him before in my life, but I was impressed by the in-ring stuff. But then it's like, I gotta watch fucking old-ass cringe Jericho beat him with 2 fucking half-ass Judas effects to further the story of like him and I can't even remember the guy's game, fucking Kachaka or Maka Maka, whatever the fucking dude's family that nobody gives a shit about. Like, again, why if this is all just to set up fucking like the Kachakata match, like why are we fucking going through all these hoops? Like, and just like it felt like a really long match. They should have just had Jericho fucking eat the L in this, and it's like it would have made so much more sense. But you know, it is what it is. And then again, like, you know, Jericho looked better than Jeff Hardy in this match, even with the stupid Judas effect. I hate the Judas effect. That's going to be one of the worst finishers of all time. I don't give a shit. Fucking, it's a spinning back fist. Like, what the fuck? From like a 55-year-old man with like no karate experience. What are we doing here? Then we get the Bullet Club Gold segment, which I loved. It was funny, but I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And I know this is like one of the few stories that AEW has been telling, because I do know that there was like the whole thing with the Guns and Billy Gunn obviously being their father was like with them, and then he switched to the Acclaimed. I know that that was a thorough storyline that they told from start to finish, but now you've basically erased all that, because now the Acclaimed and the Guns are just together and they've joined with Bullet Club Gold. So now you've got like this whole thing. I was like, what the fuck? And then they're like, bang, bang, scissor gang. Like the whole shtick. And like, I'm sorry, Billy Gunn at like doing the DX shit with them, it was fucking lame. This shit is lame. But like, it's funny, but it's also lame. And like, they're pulling out fucking cardboard cutouts from under the ring. They had the one of Juice. Like, I don't know. Maybe this is just like, I'm like, you know, too old of a wrestling fan at this point. It was like I didn't get it, but it was like there were still funny moments. They have character. I want to like them, but like just give me a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? Give me a little meat on the bone here. I think this was supposed to be like an introductory, but again, it's like what a weird random, and like just AEW in general really loves like their weird random fucking like super factions. They're just like faction. Take 3 fucking factions, put them together. That's a faction. Jesus Christ. And then, so this was, for me, one of the highlights of the day. I fucking love Toni Storm. I don't give a shit. When anybody says timeless Toni Storm is fucking chef's kiss, she's money. Some of the shit she said on commentary had me fucking dying. At one point, she's like, Taz, I love your work, but I have to let you know, it's pronounced souffle. That fucking killed me. I am going to call it souffle for the rest of my life now. The other one was another thing she said. She was like, it was Deonna Purrazzo did a move in the ring, and she's like, oh, that's a slap right in the titties, straight out of my playbook, stealing all my artistry. And then she drops the line, these women are very good, but they're no Wendy Richter. Like, she is just fucking fantastic. I love this whole shtick that she's doing. Like, that was money. They're telling a story. That was like, you know, for all the lamentation that I've seen for the AEW women's division, like, this was the most coherent story on the entire show, was that her and Deonna Purrazzo were legitimately like friends and came up together in the business, have matching tattoos, and they are headed into a match together. That's why Toni Storm's at ringside. That's why Deonna Purrazzo is going against Taya Valkyrie. And, you know, and they even are telling the story that Taya Valkyrie is upset that Diana has jumped the line, so to speak, and is getting this title shot. So, like, you have coherent storytelling. This was easily the best story of the entire show. It was the only one that I was like, oh, okay, I can see what they've done, what they're doing, and where they're going. And this was like a complete thing, bought in totally. And again, it's like, if you don't like it at that point, fine. That's your personal taste. And every wrestling fan is different, and everyone's going to have different tastes. I love the segment. I love the character. I love what they're doing. But it's like, again, it had a tangential and comprehensive beginning, middle, and end for me coming in cold on this storyline that I could sink my teeth into that most of the other show just didn't have. So we finally get to the main event, Swerve versus RVD, telegraphed as all fuck. Even going back to that prior match, Tony Storm's dropping classic lines. And then at one point, I think it's the fucking, I'm forgetting his name now. The dude with the fucking lucha mask, Executioner, or whatever the fuck he calls himself with the desk there. Excalibur. There we go. Jesus Christ. He says something of like, you know, Swerve's opponent tonight, like, they don't, we talked to Adam Page and he said his opponent doesn't grow on cannabis trees. And it was like, again, trying to fit in these really fucking corny ass lines. I don't know who the fucking writers are for this show. This is the pet peeve too, is like, there is a big difference between writing for professional wrestling and writing reality television. And when these wrestling companies hire these fucking reality TV writers to kind of ham fist these corny ass lines in, it just doesn't fucking work. And then you're expecting the talent to have to get that shit over. It just, it falls so flat. Like, so, you know, anyways, it's telegraphed as fuck. Obviously, RVD comes out. Everybody knows it's going to be RVD. And the one final swerve, you know, pun intended, that Adam Page throws him is that it's a hardcore match. So we get the hardcore match with RVD. RVD still looks great. Takes the L in this match to Swerve, who looks fantastic. Goes over. And then, again, this is the confusing part. In the whole time I've been watching this, in my mind, they're setting up a triple threat with Samoa Joe, Swerve, and Adam Hangman Page. And then they basically make a match between, it's going to be Hangman and Swerve again. And I guess the winner is going to go against her. I thought it was, again, I don't know what the fuck's going on. It was a little murky at the end. So it's like the only fucking thorough line story that I really understood, like I said, was Gianna Perazzo and Tony Storm for the AEW Women's title. Everything else on this show was just like, just felt like they were throwing shit at the wall. And, you know, if your whole goal is to be the opposite of WWE, I feel like the thing you need to do is, again, the wrestling is good. Obviously they have the technical skills and the ability to, you know, do things outside of the box that aren't always available in WWE. But at the same time, it's like, you need to be able to rein that shit in and, you know, tell comprehensive stories. And for me to come in cold like this, I should be able to pick up an episode and like kind of have an idea of what's going on. And I felt like coming out of this, there was not a fucking reason for me to keep watching this show, like on a continued weekly basis. Like there was nothing for me to really sink my teeth into and be like, oh, I can't wait to see next week's episode. I honestly could give a shit. So I think that's like the biggest problem in a nutshell that AEW is having is like, again, just go back to basics, focus on your pro wrestling, but also tell comprehensive and long-term stories. And that's just what people want. And then, you know, before we move on here, I'll comment on the Sammy Guevara thing. He crushed Jeff Hardy's head like a grape. You know, my first reaction was, shit happens. I mean, first of all, it's literally wrestling. And I saw a comment online that said, oh, this is why they need a PC center. do you think they practice these moves? Like, you don't fucking go and practice. Like, they're not practicing 360 Phoenix splashes, you guys. Like, that's not a thing. You're not just like doing reps of fucking triple threat moonsaults. Like, that's not how it works. You do it in the moment and shit happens. And literally, again, I went back and was on the show that I just, went over, the AEW Dynamite show from literally 3 days ago on the 14th. Fucking Jeff Hardy himself crushed Moxley's head on a bad whisper in the wind fall. And then later in the show, Commander fucking crushes Wardlow's larynx with a fucking Phoenix Splash, like hit him basically almost the same way that Sammy Guevara hit Jeff Hardy. The only difference was knee to throat instead of knee to nose. So that goes all the way back up to the higher ups. That goes up to, there's a reason WWE limits the moves that their wrestlers can do. Certain moves are considered banned. You're not supposed to do them. And, with Sammy Guevara again, too, you're talking about this, that he's in there against fucking probably his hero, Jeff Hardy. I think he even referenced it at a certain point of like, when I grew up watching Jeff Hardy do Swanton bombs, now I'm doing a Swanton bomb to Jeff Hardy. Obviously, he is trying to elevate his game and do, the most. He's trying to push to that next level. And you need, again, executives and, the type of bookers and, the producers of the match that work with the wrestlers. You need those type of figureheads to be responsible enough to be like, hey, kid, this isn't fucking, AEW Revolution or whatever our WrestleMania is. This is fucking a Dynamite. You need to do this 52 weeks a year, assuming you're not on one of the other three. We have 3 weekly shows now. Like, we need you to think more long-term, not just about yourself, but obviously, you crush Jeff Hardy's face because you're doing an unnecessary move. Save that kind of shit for like the big stage. If you have some, real crazy shit like that. Otherwise, just hit him with a fucking like cool looking splash, or a fucking standard moonsault or something that's more controllable. Cause like, again, this is not just to Sammy Guevara. This is the whole fucking, from what I could tell, there are not really limits on the wrestlers in that sense of like, they're just going to go out there and try and tear the house down on every fucking show. And it's like that mentality of, you see that in other sports too, of like trying to kill yourself on every play. And it's like, you almost need the coaches to be figureheads and savvy enough to be like, hey, no, I need you to pull it back, my guy. Cause like, you can't be hurting yourself like that. So before we get into fan questions, this is a comedy and humor based podcast, but at the same time, I don't want to be ignorant of the news. Obviously, with all the Vince McMahon shit swirling around, and the accusations that have been coming out, very recently online, we saw now not only is Vince involved, but Stephanie McMahon has been officially accused. So if you aren't aware, the Ashley Massaro case, which I've known about for a long time, lots of wrestling fans have known about for a long time, it was very much swept under the rug. If you're not familiar, she was attacked and sexually assaulted, and drugged and violated in several different ways while on an overseas trip in Kuwait, doing a show for the troops. And, the WWE covered it up at the end of the day. They covered it up with the U.S. military. There's obviously all kinds of evidence out there at this point, whether you look at affidavits, sworn affidavits, whether you look at some of the reporting that has come out since. But essentially, her best friend, Ashley Massaro's best friend, Cara Pipia, via News Nation, accused the WWE, but specifically Stephanie McMahon, of covering up the assault. Vince requested at the time that basically Stephanie take his place in the boardroom meeting upon Ashley Massaro's return to the USA from Kuwait through Riyadh, which is like a whole other, part of the story. Again, there are full affidavits, stories, sources, reporters out there, much more responsible and educated than myself that are handling this. I only bring it up because, again, I do not want to seem like I'm willfully ignoring it. Obviously, I've said before on the first show, what Vince McMahon did was reprehensible, not even a little bit surprising. The fact that Stephanie was also involved, again, not that surprising, all things considered. Whether this has further ramifications, now, I've seen people say, what if Triple H is involved? I think at the time in 2006, 2007, he was still an active wrestler. I don't know how involved he was on that back end. Now, the other thing is, even if he did know about it, whether he knew through Stephanie or just kind of through the rumor mill, if he wouldn't have been in a position of responsibility if he had heard it through the rumor mill, and if he heard it from Stephanie directly, then potentially, it's the thing of husband, wife, confidentiality. I don't know how that would hold up in a court of law, but I'm just saying, again, I don't know that he was tangentially or directly involved, but if he was, fuck him, fuck Vince, fuck the whole family, fuck everyone who was involved. John Laurinaitis has been named, every executive to help cover that shit up. It was fucking disgusting. The U.S. military also very much involved in not investigating, basically covering it up. And, even a quote directly from again, continuing what the best friend Cara Pipia said on News Nation, she basically said that Vince requested that Stephanie McMahon replace him so that there was a female presence in the boardroom, but that essentially Ashley Massaro was bullied into keeping it under wraps, and the locker room doctor, had even evaluated her and was sympathetic, kind of gave her advice, but had no power ultimately. So it was they all knew. They all fucking knew. And even in the affidavit, this is honestly to me the most damning thing. Vince did at least apologize for what I went through, but then stressed that if I disclosed this incident, it would ruin the relationship between the WWE and the U.S. military. That is a direct quote from Ashley Massaro herself via her affidavit, when she was essentially going after Vince McMahon. So, it's a disgusting case from top to bottom. Everything that's happening with Vince, it's not surprising. He deserves everything bad coming his way. Anyone who was involved in covering it up is also deserving of, justice. And ultimately, Ashley Massaro, her family, her friends, and, probably countless other victims are all deserving of justice. So at this time, I'm just going to play a short tribute to Ashley. This is a video credit to @GlennB 9876. I found this on YouTube, and then I added, I basically just, touched up the video a little bit, added her old entrance music. So I just wanted to play a little memorial video before we get into the fan questions today. And so here it is.
You better hold on tight, 'cause I'm gonna love you nice. I'm gonna do it right. Let me light a fire in you tonight. My eyes have never seen someone who looks like you. I wonder if you dream of my hand loving you, because I know I do, every day and every night. And I know I'll lose control if I can't crush this appetite. This dream is eating me alive. This dream is eating me alive. Can't you see I'm burning up inside? I pray I will not be denied. I'm gonna
All right. Let's get into a couple of fan questions. Again, this is a grassroots podcast, you guys, and I need you guys out there listening to be my EVPs. So please send in your fan questions. They will get on the show. Right now, I'm obviously still making up my own questions, but I would love to have questions from you guys out there. I'll give you guys a shout out on the show. Maybe make a nice little graphic. So again, send them to me on Twitter at Jack Lusney. Or if you don't want the shout out, you want something a little more private, feel free to send me questions by email to thefantasyjoker420@gmail.com. So, our first question of the day: what is your hometown and who is your favorite hometown wrestler? So, I am from Toronto. There is a special place in my heart for some Stratus faction. Trish Stratus, obviously one of the greatest exports from the city of Toronto, but she's not my choice here. I just had to give her an honorable mention. I got to go with my guys, Edge and Christian, specifically Edge, obviously, but it's not even because of their wrestling career, ironically enough. I was such a huge fan of the ENC Pod of Awesomeness. And that's one thing that I am still hoping that they bring back. Maybe when they are no longer active wrestlers, we'll see the return of the ENC Pod of Awesomeness. Man, the story of little Dave Bautista, I still sing the song sometimes. We are sorry, little Dave Bautista. We must leave you with his foster family. Oh, that shit pops me every single time. All right. Who are the biggest missed opportunities in terms of NXT call-ups to main event, in your opinion? I mean, there's lots of choices. I think we've seen a few rough NXT call-ups in the past, but my choice here, the War Raiders, because immediately from the time they got brought up, had to drop war from the name because of the language police out there. It's fucking stupid. So they go from War Raiders having honestly this badass fucking entrance, everyone chanting war every time they come in. It was great. And then they went with the Viking Experience. Oh, I don't think I've ever cringed harder at a name change in my entire fucking life. I've seen some bad ones in WWE, but the Viking Experience was so bad. And it's now they go from the Viking Experience, aka the Viking Raiders, aka the Jabroni Jobbers. They were so badass in NXT, and now Valhalla, the fucking, I can't even remember what her name used to be, honestly. Sarah Logan, whatever the fuck her name was. They are all jobbers at this point. They just fucking, every match I see them in, they're just getting fucking jobbed out, losing every which way. And it's funny because it's they're supposed to be this dominating force in tag team. It's when's the last time they honestly won a match? I literally can't even remember. And then the other sticking point to me is again, as a writer, certain things drive me nuts. When they introduced the character of Valhalla, I was well, Valhalla is a place. It's not a person. So it's whoever the fuck was writing that obviously didn't properly understand Viking lore, because they're oh, we'll name her Valhalla. Valhalla is the place that Vikings go when they die. So it's just again, super annoying to me when they just completely, you've set up again this whole parameter of they are Vikings, they live the Viking life, and it's well, they would know that Valhalla is a place in the afterlife and not what you name a fucking person. And unless she was supposed to be the embodiment of that place, and then it was even that was never properly translated. And it's look, if you're trying to get that nuance with a fucking wrestler's character, it might go over the heads of some fans. I'm sorry. So, the Viking Raiders, the War Raiders, fucking, that was easily to me the worst one, because they were so good in NXT. Their matches were top tier, and now again it's they are fucking relegated to the bottom of the card. They're basically jobbers at this point. Our final question of the day before I sign off here. What is the best real life fight that you have ever seen in your life? So I get ready for a doozy here, folks, because the best fight I've ever seen in my entire life was the mom fight. So this is fucking lore. First of all, this high school does not even exist anymore. It was torn down. Shout out to Sir James Dunn High School in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. If you went there, yeah, that place was the shit. So there was this very chaotic time in my high school career. It was basically going from grade 10 into grade 11. The principal of the school at the time left the school. I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but she left the school. What happened then was there was actually a vacuum for the principal job where it just wasn't really filled for an entire year. The vice principal and the school guidance counselor, who were both not very stern people, let's say, were in charge of discipline or the lack thereof. The school went completely fucking unhinged for that basically whole year. There were fights like all the time. It was like a rave in the parking lot. Like I would show up in the morning and straight up people were drinking, doing drugs. I'm not saying like doing drugs like smoking weed. Smoking weed was standard. People were fucking popping Molly and doing shit in the parking lot like it was a fucking party, dude. So this one day, it was we're all in the parking lot gathered, and just the way it's set up, the way that I would describe it is there's an entryway on the right, and the parking lot is in the middle, and then there's an exit way on the left-hand side. So it's almost like a really big U, and with like a parking lot in the middle, and it's so there's a van that comes in on this side. It's kind of moseying around. We all don't really notice it. We're all on this other side where we would hang out next to the railing. We're all smoking, partying, drinking, whatever's going on, right? People are talking, yakking, having a good time. The van rolls up. And there's like, in the van, there's like a mom driving. And then there's like a girl in the front seat. There's a couple people in the back seat, right? I can see all of this. I'm like front and center for all of this. So the girl in the front seat, her window goes down. She starts yakking, talking shit to one of the girls that's like in the general, area. And so they start having a back and forth. And now everybody starts tuning in, realizing there's a big cat fight kind of happening. And so people start chanting, fight, fight, fight. The mom in the car, you can see her actively getting nervous, right? She decides, all right, I'm done. Starts pulling out, and they're pulling out of the driveway. As they're pulling out, I'm standing and my friend is beside me, and I hear someone say to my friend, my friend is standing beside me, and I hear my friend say to the girl, so the girl that was arguing with the girl in the van, she's standing, my friend is next to her, and I'm next to him. She's holding a DQ flurry, which, if you're not familiar, is like it's a blizzard or whatever it's called. It's like an ice cream treat, right? He says to her, "Throw your DQ blizzard." This girl, like Dan fucking Marino, hucks this frozen treat. It hangs precariously in the air and goes through the open driver window, explodes all over the inside of the car. I'm like, I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, holy fucking shit. The mom, instant fucking rage, pulls the van over in the middle of the road, comes flying out of the fucking van and just runs up and fucking boom. Now this girl and the mom are in a full-on fist fight. Next thing you know, there's the daughter in the van, and then the friend pops out with one of the friends. There's two fucking girls from the crowd that are friends with the girl popping. We got a whole fucking ass brawl going on. Finally, the mom separates. She's fucking freaking out. She decides she's going to go in the school and try to like rattle the girl. The next, holy fuck. So it's like a whole kerfuffle, whole thing, whole fight. Ends pretty like, you know, they get separated and the mom fucks off. And she did end up going to the school, which is the wrong fucking decision because she definitely got charged for assaulting a fucking minor. Because no matter what that kid did, like you can't fucking assault a 14-year-old. So fucking like the girl got in trouble, the mom fucking got charges, and out of all of it, my buddy, shout out to my bro, Kyle Thibodeau, you know where you are out there. Fucking, he had to go to court and be a witness to like basically like say all the events that happened. So it was the fucking craziest fight that I've ever seen in my entire life. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. So glad I get to tell it on the podcast. So hey, it's been a journey. I am, low key dying, and my little doggy here is in need of a walk. So hey, shout out to you guys if you made it this far into the show. Again, I super appreciate you guys. I need the fan support. This is the only way this show is going to grow. I'm not looking for sponsors. I'm not trying to do ad reads. I don't want to have to do that monotonous bullshit. So to support the show, all I need, super kick that like and subscribe button for me. Maybe share this around a little bit because sharing is caring. And most importantly of all, guys, send me your questions. Hit me up on Twitter, on Facebook, email thefantasyjoker420@gmail.com. Send me those questions and I will catch all of you guys on the flip side.
My positive contact results in affirmative impact. Never vulgarize on raps. I'm never primitive, but cannibalistic, vicious characteristics, hereditary potency, episodic genes, yo. Empathy, HMCs at extraordinary speed. Some of me is light, slipping in razor blades and grease in your bare feet. I see your fucking colleagues misprize you very much to your dismay. So today, I can say you won't be running away. Hold your tail between your legs. I'm gonna advocate when you feel below stakes. I'll take a hacksaw to you cockeyed, mumble rap slack jaws. Leave you shredded on the side like some coleslaw. The double time with that clothesline from hell like Bradshaw. I'm toxic like septic shock. A dying breed like